Welcome back to the Global Business Report here on Arise News. Before the break, we brought you conversations on the public sector side, the subnationals, two of them, Cross River State and Ogun State. Now we're going to give you a private sector discussion from the Intra-Africa Trade Fair. Oil and Gas Group Executive Officer, Chief Executive Officer of the Owando Group, Wale Tinubu, says Africa's oil producers need oil prices at levels that will enable them to manage the present volatility in the industry. He was speaking to Arise News, of course, at the ongoing Intra-Africa Trade Fair 2025. Let's take a listen.
If you look at Afrexim as a reference point, the bank started with limited capital, under $500 million contributed by the 52 African states, and has grown from that size to a $7 billion bank. In the last 10 years, Afrexim has grown tenfold and has been able to, and has increased its balance sheet size to $40 billion odd, thus supporting the emergence of major African champions to take our natural resources, invest in them, process them, and export them, as we see today. Everything from the large industrial groups we know today, whether it's BOA or Dangote, they all patronize Afrexim, and Afrexim has been a good institution in terms of supporting them. The same principles need to apply to the hydrocarbon industry. We need a specialized bank. We need a bank in which the African producers are contributing capital to, Mozambique, Nigeria, Angola, Ghana. And that will be able to have a good credit rating, go into the international community and raise a substantial amount of money. We have something like 30 to 40% of global oil reserves, hydrocarbon reserves, are in Africa, in Mozambique, in Algeria, where we are, in Nigeria. And we have an incredible amount of capital, which we can raise from those resources. We can drill additional wells, improve our industrial capacity in the petrochemicals sector and the refining sector as well, and export these products. One of the key things we always underestimate is that 45% of Africans don't have access to electricity as well too. The easiest way of achieving that is via gas, And Africa sits on close to 50% of global gas reserves. What's missing is two things. One, capital. Capital is the biggest impediment. And Africa needs to build its own financial institutions, and it's just a wonderful thing to see the IATF as a platform in which the African Union, via the African Export-Import Bank, is sponsoring all the countries coming together to look at ways and means of showing the resources that they have, the services that they have, the opportunities that they have, and in the same vein, having in parallel the conversations on strengthening the capital that is really required to drive this continent forward. Fair price. And I say this because the world benefits from low energy prices. Africa will benefit from low energy prices because it means economic growth. India has benefited from being able to get cheap barrels out of Russia during the war, and they probably made $20 billion in savings from buying Russian oil at cap prices at lower prices over the last 2 years since the Ukraine crisis started. The U.S. has a drill baby drill policy from their new president. So all the restrictions that they had from focusing on net zero and emissions targets have been reduced or relaxed by the new administration. So we need to react. We're not going to sit back as producers on this side and outprice ourselves to the point where expensive shale oil can go into the market. So we need a price that protects our market share, but also a price that ensures we get a good return to capital, right? And so I'm comfortable at the $65 mark, which we're seeing, and I think OPEC has moved from a price fixer to one of not just a market regulator, but a market, somebody who balances out the markets, a market integrator in terms of the pricing that they're doing. And I have a lot of confidence, a lot of faith in the conversations that are going on now to give us the right amount of barrels to be released into the market to ensure that we maintain the equilibrium.
My final point, you're going to be, Owando is a major sponsor and supporter of the African Energy Week. In 3 weeks' time, in Cape, your key message for African energy leaders and international energy leaders from Saudi Arabia, US, everywhere, assembling in Cape Town in 3 weeks' time for the IATF2025.
For me, it's always simple. Africa needs to take charge of its own destiny. We need to seek the partnerships we need, financial, intellectual, technical. We need to open our borders to one another. For example, we all struggle to get an Algerian visa. So if we're really serious about doing business, why are we struggling to get visas to come here? At least people who are coming on economic missions should be allowed to get a visa on arrival. So African heads of state, please tear down these walls and let's do some business together for starts. It's not enough to sign big treaties. You need to do the simple things, like make life easy for the continent to truly integrate and stop focusing our energies or flying abroad for basic goods and services which we could secure from within our continent. So that'll be my message. Take charge, Africa.